Hey everyone, Spidey again. I'm glad you had a great time with our reading last night. So let's do it again. This time with the second part of the story. Because that's right, the tale of Peter Rabbit was only the first part. The second part is the tale of Benjamin Bunny. That's Peter's cousin. So ready? Here we go. The Tale of Benjamin Bunny by Beatrix Potter. One morning, a little rabbit sat on a bank. He pricked his ears and listened to the trit-trot of a pony. A gig was coming along the road. It was driven by Mr. McGregor, and beside him sat Mrs. McGregor in her best bonnet. And there's Benjamin's little spider sense going off. Bunnies have spider sense too, but they call it bunny sense. As soon as they had passed, little Benjamin slid down into the road and set off with a hop, skip, and a jump to call on his relatives, who lived in the wood at the back of Mr. McGregor's garden. That wood was full of rabbit holes, and in the neatest, sandiest hole of all lived Benjamin's aunt and cousins, Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and Peter. Old Mrs. Rabbit was a widow. She made her living by knitting rabbit wool mittens and gloves. I actually bought a pair for them. Rabbits are surprisingly good at knitting. She also sold herbs, rosemary tea, and lavender. Rabbits love their lavender. Little Benjamin did not very much want to see his aunt, though. He came around the back of the fir tree and nearly tumbled upon the top of his cousin Peter. See? Peter was sitting by himself. He looked poorly and was dressed in a red pocket handkerchief. "Peter," little Benjamin said in a whisper, "who's got your clothes?" Peter replied, "The scarecrow in Mr. McGregor's garden." He described how he'd been chased about the garden and dropped his shoes and coat. Little Benjamin sat down beside his cousin and assured him that Mr. McGregor had gone out, and Mrs. McGregor also, and certainly for the day, because she was wearing her best bonnet. See? Benjamin comforting his cousin Peter. Peter said he'd hoped it would rain. At this point, Mrs. Rabbit's voice was heard inside the rabbit hole calling, "Cottontail! Cottontail! Fetch some more chamomile!" Peter said he thought he might feel better if he went for a walk. They went away hand in hand and got up upon the flat top of the wall at the bottom of the wood. From here, they looked down into Mr. McGregor's garden. Peter's coat and shoes were plainly to be seen upon the scarecrow, topped with an old hat from Mr. McGregor's. See? And there's Peter's clothes. Little Benjamin said, "It spoils people's clothes to squeeze under a gate. The proper way to get in is to climb down a pear tree." Okay. Peter fell down head first, but it was of no consequence, as the bed below was nearly raked and quite soft. It had been sown with lettuce. Them climbing into the garden. They left a great many odd little footmarks all over the bed, especially little Benjamin, who was wearing clogs. Yes, bunnies have clogs too. They don't have Crocs though. Little Benjamin said that the first thing to be done was to get back Peter's clothes, in order that they might be able to use the pocket handkerchief. They took them off the scarecrow. There had been rain during the night. There was water in the shoes, and the coat had somehow shrunk. Benjamin tried on the old hat, but it was too big for him. See? Peter's got his snazzy jacket back, although it's a little smaller. He then suggested they fill the pocket handkerchief with onions, as a little present for his aunt. Peter did not seem to be enjoying himself. He kept hearing noises. Peter's spider sense is going off too. Rabbit sense. Benjamin, on the contrary, was perfectly at home and ate a lettuce leaf. He said that he was in the habit of coming to the garden in the habit of coming to the garden with his father to get lettuce for their Sunday dinner. The name of little Benjamin Papa was Old Mr. Benjamin Bunny. The lettuces certainly were very fine. See? He's having himself a nice little snack. Peter did not eat anything. He said he should like to go home, presently dropping half of the onions. Aw, Peter doesn't feel well. He wants to go home. Little Benjamin said that it was not possible to get back up the pear tree with a load of vegetables. He led the way boldly towards the other end of the garden. They went along with a little walk on planks under a sunny, red-bricked wall. The mice sat on their doorstep cracking cherry stones. They winked at Peter Rabbit and little Benjamin Bunny. See? Presently, Peter let the pocket handkerchief go. They got amongst flower pots and frames and tubs. Peter heard noises worse than ever. His eyes were as big as lollipops. He was a step or two in front of his cousin when he suddenly stopped. Looks like the rabbit senses are tingling. Uh-oh. This is what those little rabbits saw around that corner. Little Benjamin took one look, and half a minute less, and in no time, he hid himself and Peter and the onions underneath a large basket. But what did they see? Big cat. Uh-oh. The cat got up and stretched herself, and then came and sniffed the basket. Perhaps she liked the smell of onions. Anyway, she sat down on top of the basket. She sat there for 5 hours. Wow. Ready? I cannot draw you a picture of Peter and Benjamin underneath the basket because it was quite dark and because the smell of onions was fearful and made Peter and little Benjamin cry. The sun got round behind the wood and it was quite late in the afternoon, but still the cat sat upon the basket. At length there was a pitter-patter, and some bits of mortar fell from the wall above. The cat looked up and saw old Mr. Benjamin Bunny prancing along the top of the wall of the upper terrace. He was smoking a pipe of lavender and had a little switch in his hand. He was looking for his son. He's quite the dapper fellow, isn't he? Old Mr. Bunny had no opinions whatsoever of the cat. He took a tremendous jump off the top of the wall and onto the top of the cat. He cuffed it off at the basket and kicked it into the greenhouse, scratching off a handful of fur. The cat was way too surprised to scratch back. Wow. I wonder if old Mr. Benjamin Bunny trained with Hawkeye. That sounds like something he would do. Or maybe even Daredevil. Daredevil Bunny. When old Mr. Bunny had driven the cat into the greenhouse, he locked the door. He then came back to the basket and took his son Benjamin by the ear. He then took out his nephew Peter. When he took out the handkerchief of onions and marched out of the garden. Uh-oh. Some little bunnies are in trouble. When Mr. McGregor returned about half an hour later, he observed several things which perplexed him. It looked as though some person had been walking all over the garden in a pair of clogs, only the footmarks were too ridiculously little. He also could not understand how the cat could have managed to shut herself up inside the greenhouse, locked door upon the outside. Yeah, that is weird, isn't it? And there he is, all confused. When Peter got home, his mother forgave him, because she was so glad to see he had found his shoes and his coat. Cottontail and Peter folded up the pocket handkerchief, and old Mrs. Rabbit strung up the onions and hung them from the kitchen ceiling, with bunches of herbs and lavender. The end. And there they all are, happily ever after. So Peter got his jacket back, his clothes back, and with the help of his cousin Benjamin. So I hope you all liked the story, and who knows, maybe we'll do another one tomorrow. Until then, have fun and be safe.